Good evening, everybody. On time? Must be a new year, new me. Um, yes, I have made it on time. Partly because I had to work somewhere different today, so I was able to get home a little bit earlier. I also got some new books, which makes me very happy. If you can just give me a second here, I. Ah, there is actually one thing I forgot to do in the background. I don't think this will affect the stream, but it would be nice. It'd be nice to have taken care of while I can. It's just my virtual machines. I got a couple things going on them, and okay, looks like there's some problems there. I don't want it to take up too much time on the stream. I just thought I might be able to get something nice. Oh, there it goes. Okay. I'm going to jump into the game, and then I'll try and get things done in between. Again, the focus here is the stream, but if I can have something run in the background, so much the better. So there have been a few updates in terms of traveling at night. I've actually debated doing... sorry, just one second here. I've debated doing some summaries in terms of all the new traveling at night news, but I imagine that there will probably be quite a bit more that's coming out. So it's never clear exactly when the right time to do something like that is. But yeah, it's there was actually a bit of background. Again, I remember somebody had said, this is one thing I always find very difficult when trying to do some kind of research on something. There is your individual experience, but if you want to make a general statement about people, you obviously need to consider a much broader spectrum of people. So a good example of this will be advertising, right? Almost nobody thinks advertising works on them. And in fact, most people think that advertising that they don't see doesn't exist. And so, you know, the biggest... I realize this is just opening up a complete can of worms here. But politics is the best example of this problem, where... You know, and you can actually see this in some political science papers where effectively, you know, it's entire literature around how people who vote differently from you are irrational. And believe me, as somebody who, how do I put this nicely? The candidates I vote for very rarely get into government. I don't think I have a track record of like nobody I vote for getting into the office. And of course I vote, you know, municipal up to federal. I recognize that probably municipal elections have far more impact on my day-to-day life than federal ones, although certainly it's very hard to get people to vote in municipal elections, let alone take an interest in the topics. But, you know, there is a real problem, particularly among some of the most influential voices in sort of a lot of political commentary, of just utterly failing to appreciate why someone might vote or think differently from other people. This is not the same as saying that they're justified, or even in some cases giving these people respect. There are a lot of people who I feel it is completely reasonable to disrespect for their choices, you know, but if you want to understand something, you do actually need to go so far as to understand how someone could make that decision. And you know, sometimes that means, you know, putting yourself, I mean, it's like creating characters in a story. You know, if you want to make someone interesting, they need to have flaws. If you want to make a villain interesting, you can't sit in judgment of them. And this is actually one really big problem I have whenever I try to write fiction. One big drawback I run into is I actually feel quite bad about causing suffering on these completely fictional people. It's just kind of my nature, as completely pathetic as that is. And so, especially too, because I think in my real life, I'm probably far less conscious about people. But yeah, anyways, there's some biography for you. But yeah, the challenge here is that, again, if I want to try and understand the games business, and that is something that I do write on, I wanted to say somewhat frequently, but I'd say somewhat infrequently with my current release cadence. I do actually need to take into account the fact that people's experiences of games are very different from mine. You know, more people will be playing mobile games than I do. Most people are not aware of the release dates for most games that they are interested in. There's still a lot of people who pre-order games, despite the fact that a lot of quote-unquote core gamers have effectively said they will never pre-order a game. And again, to be able to understand that business, you need to be able to understand how people actually behave and how people actually feel about things. So all of that is to say, there's I think a broad perception that Weather Factory did not advertise these, that somehow word of mouth was sufficient. And word of mouth is wonderful, but more or less there is a confirmation now that yes, Weather Factory does in fact advertise games. I'm pretty sure I've seen a Reddit ad before. But on the subreddit, there was a thread that had started up talking about how it was inefficient that some of these traveling at night posts were coming up. And Lottie, in fact, put one of the two people who run Weather Factory put up a blog today and talked about that campaign, talked about its success. It seems to have been fantastically successful. Again, word of mouth completely blew away any of the marketing efforts. But it seems that the initial interest in, hey, Jamie, good to see you. It seems that the initial interest in traveling at night is very, very strong. And definitely the ads were reaching people who are fans of Book of Hours and Cultist Simulator who were not aware that Weather Factory was making a third game. So this is... I don't know. I liked it because it talks about the business side. I actually think it would be better if successful game developers were talking a lot more about the unsexy parts of game development. There's a lot. I don't want to say the name of the newsletter because there seem to be a well-regarded individual, but I've really been getting quite tired by the titles because it very frequently will have something like how X game got to, some 100,000 or more sales on Steam. And it almost never, or might even go so far as to say never, actually explains how. It is one of the best examples of sort of like selection and survivor bias that I can think of. I think there are very few examples of that, the cases that they talk about that actually can be, replicated. And so I think now, the thing is that this sells newsletters. And if your business model is to get people subscribing or to get people to go in, you do need to play that game. But I think the stuff like what Weather Factory is doing, talking about, a marketing campaign that cost a couple $100, talking about what worked, what didn't, and basically revealing to people, gamers do not think or behave at all like you. I personally think that is considerably more valuable then, 100 talks on how, you just need to keep making TikTok accounts until the algorithm picks you up and you go viral. In fact, even the concept of going viral, I think, is a highly misleading idea. So anyways, sorry, that was probably more negative than it needed to be, but what I wanted to talk about here specifically was Weather Factory have put out what I thought was a very good and informative blog on how some of their early marketing efforts have resulted in some very, very positive early signals for their upcoming game. And again, that game's a few years out, but it's definitely very exciting to see people respond so warmly to this idea. And I really hope that the momentum continues. So let's jump back into the game. I also have coffee. So not only am I starting on time, I've got coffee to keep Olaf happy and me happy. It's warm. It's even hot. I'm not drinking room temperature coffee, and keeping in mind that I'm in Ottawa in winter. So room temperature means cold, iced even. Seems like a pretty decent start to the day. I also had a really good meeting. Meetings are so boring, but I actually had a really good meeting on at work today. I was left with a really strong feeling that we're onto something really, really positive. So. All right, let me just make sure. Yes, okay, so we're already reading the new material, so writing on the wall. So there's a few things that I have in mind. So one of the things we were doing here was we're reading all of the individual books, these Newman texts. These were the last ones to get details. What I'm going to do after we level up the various lessons, I'm going to take my subset of books and I'm going to reread them one more time. And I don't know if I will actually write the history or I'll just make a decision and say I need further information to sort of talk myself out of this. But after that, the research is done and the Lighthouse Institute becomes the priority then. So the best thing I can do right now is just unpause and see where the day takes us. I suppose I'm a little curious why I don't have... I feel like it would be helpful to have one of the visitors, or not visitor, one of the villagers generating memories. I'm sure there's a reason why I didn't do that, but I'm allowed to change my mind. Alright, Mr. Kill can always spare a few hours to help a friend. A tamer of trees, a worker of woods, a consigner of cadavers. He also has been known to try his hand very diffidently at poetry. And looks like we're not recycling the sweet bones. So it is winter and the storms have tightened the seas. I am sitting before the fire in the sweet bones with a beef and potato pasty in one hand and a hot ale posset in the other. Mr. Kill, Ryan Spry, doesn't mind stopping for a gossip. So the aim here is just, I want as much as possible to get through the levels for the various skills. I'm even at a point here where I really don't need to level up the skills, but seeing as we're doing a salon, it would be nice to have these things improved. Alright, so that was Inks of Containment. I believe everything else is 6 or higher. That's right, so putrefactions and calcinations and snow stories were supposed to level themselves up. I don't believe I have the memories for that, though. No. I may focus on door and wall first, just because I think that's what we're building towards. Dead men don't tell no bloody tales. Well, who'd listen? But yeah, in terms of research, we're on a slight pause for that just while we're leveling up the skills. But once we'll keep going with the Newman texts, obviously. But once we're past those, I'm going to focus on a subset that I think are relevant towards a decision that I want to make, and then Oriflammes will be determining any further work that I do. The writing on the wall, the most delicious traditions of the Carapace Cross, as recorded on the walls of the Mansus and transcribed into a book of 99 pages by one known only as CC. Although this book does not exist, it is read to a sleeper under certain very specific circumstances, and certain fragments jotted down on waking. It was hunger that made worms of dragons, when they consumed the corpses of ours. Without the savor secret of the Carapace, their hunger would not have been sufficient. Here is outlined the savor secret of the Carapace, which harnesses hunger to permit impossible hybridizations. With this secret, even the most potent and fundamental entities have devoured and been devoured, and this, no doubt, is why it's secret. An irresistible feast. It was hunger that made worms of dragons when they consumed the corpses of ours. When the savor secret of the without the savor secret of the Carapace, their hunger would not have been sufficient. In certain histories, that savor secret still has power. I still think this is an absolutely horrifying image, by the way, but I imagine that's the intention. The account of Kanishk at the Spider's Door. Loch Kahuli, Kanishk's victim and lover, wrote this account, perhaps posthumously. Kanishk sought to become a name. In pursuit of that end, he made Loch Kahuli the vessel of his appetites, promising Loch that they would ascend together. At the Spider's Door, he betrayed his lover. The Chiliarch listened to it happen, and then forced Kanishk into his service. The Chiliarch cannot be denied. Loch Kahuli remained to write this work and to describe the outer magics of struggle and contest. The Scar in the Sky. Nin wrote this and came to regret it. Each page of this book contains one word only, but as each page is turned, knowledge creeps in. The final page is crowded. Each reader of the book records the same word. Now it is my turn. What does not bark? Alexander Probst writes warily of Calyptra, a law, principle, or society which prevents the dissemination of dangerous knowledge. Calyptra, like the planet that occludes the star, or the Doylean dog that fails to bark, can be identified only by its absence. Even the name, I think, must be a mask. Calyptra is said to make exceptions specifically for the libraries of the Watchman's Tree. Does it make those exceptions so the Hours can make use of them? The Mirror of Melissenth, the daybook and dream journal of Abbess Melissenth, venerated as a saint and respected as an alchemist. Melissenth speaks longingly of those who would call from behind the sky. Melissenth claims that the sights and sensation arts that she describes can be used to invoke the dream of a star when sufficient sky aspect is invoked to uplift an ascendant harmony. And Damascene traditions of the House of Leith. Now, one thing that I would like to keep track of, just as an idea. So originally my inquiries were Noon, Ys, and the City Unbuilt. However, I think it's fair to say that the House of Leith, which of course has other sort of follow-ons. There's a couple of other societies which are indicated to follow from it. I think that would be fair game in terms of the Noon research. So I may cast my net a little bit wider. That's why I've been reading things like Serenity of the Black Wood and Damascene Traditions of the House of Leith. But again, we'll do one last big push of the books that I think are relevant to my particular decision, and then we can decide if there's maybe other details I want to look at. Damascene Traditions of the House of Leith. The House of Leith was an order of immortals who sought obscurity, rejecting their past and future. If the author of this short text is to be believed, the initiates of the Damascene branch were much more radical than their fellows elsewhere. The house generally forbade any potentially procreative activities for fear of the terrible consequence of too long bearing a child. The Damascene order took this much further. At one point, male initiates were required to undergo castration and female initiates to strangle any children they had previously borne. These measures were so horrific that the order was shaken by repeated schisms and eventually absorbed into the local Sisterhood of the Knot as a society of healers and exorcists. The Perugian Diaries. In 1907, at the age of 18, Christopher Olopoli left Strathcoyne's household to study theology at the University of Perugia in Italy, enrolling under the name Christopher Strathcoyne. For 4 years, since his adoption from a Bristol orphanage, Alapoli served as Strathcoyne's pupil and protege, but his relationship with this austere and secretive man was always complicated. His journal confides, "I still think Fraser's intentions are good, certainly he agrees, but I never understood the final goal of his investigations. He was never prepared to enlighten me, and good intentions or not, I can no longer bear this stream of eyes. We have agreed to part, almost amicably." Alapoli left Perugia in 1909 without completing his degree. He had long lost interest in his studies, and the latter half of the journal is concerned with his studies of Umbrian folk songs and notes towards his own compositions, which are of widely varying quality. One of the better ones, In the Marshes of Night, suggests he visited the site of Old Lake Fucinus near Ortuccio. And finally, De Bellis Murorum, an 18th century epic poem by the pseudonymous Solipstos. The poem elliptically describes a war between beasts, weather phenomena, and arcane concepts. It's quite specific about their tactics. The two one joined and the horn distinguished. Consequently, blood. Alright, so we've got a lot of memories here. I think I was originally working on door and wall, so let's see if we've got what it takes for that one. That's actually 7. So those are forge and knock that I need. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6. So if I have to, I can apply the Curious Hunch. However, if I wait, I believe, 30 seconds there is a name day riddle. So, weaving and not working, I was going to use Inks of Revelation. So that's a heart and a moth one. Now that's actually quite tricky. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So yeah, we're too short on that. So transformations and liberations. Now that needs forge and moth, so that's really not an option there. All right. So I think it's fair to say Putrefactions and Calcinations needs winter, and Snow Story needs moon. We don't have a whole lot of those other ones. So let's think about... Well, both of these wind up counting as moth. Okay, so here's my first question. If I want to level up weaving and not working, and I know that's a heart and a moth skill, what's the low-hanging fruit that I'm missing here? So I don't think any of these have the answer. It's, yeah. So I'll maybe just double check. So we have the Solace already. This doesn't help. We already have the Cheerful Ditty. Stolen Secret doesn't have Moth or Heart. Neither does Beguiling Melodies. Contradictions. Foresight doesn't. Patterns has Forge. Yeah, so not relevant. Salt doesn't. Fear is Edge and Scale. Satisfaction has Heart, but we've already got that there. Regrets are Forge and Winter. Impulse we have. Gossip is Grail and Rose, so not relevant here. Confounding Parables doesn't have... It's basically intuition with a little extra. Hindsight doesn't help us here. Bittersweet Certainty doesn't help. Again, that's Winter and Lantern. Savage Hymns are Scale, and we have the Storm. Okay. So, Curious Hunch is 1. I need 2 special memories. So one easy answer here is to take the Hush House key and get the sound. So that's my best starter. I am slightly tempted to do the Curious Hunch, but what I think I will do instead, I will start working on another Named a Riddle. I don't think none of the fear is really relevant here. So I can't recall if Solutions and Separations gives us... That's... Oh, yep. I'm wondering if I can give up one of my more affordable... Sure, I'll use an Arab on this. Okay. So that should cover me for weaving and not working in... we should say 90 seconds to be safe. So let's say that Putrefactions and Calcinations and Snow Stories are the next 2 priorities. Both are Winter and Moth. So with that in mind, well, first thing we're going to do is we'll queue up the next Newman text, because I do value research, and I don't see a lot of value in putting that on hold. So the Shretic Book of Suns. So I'm going to just have another sip of coffee. Now, in 30 seconds, all of the knock and forge stuff is going to be dealt with. Realistically, that frees up Salt and Stolen Secret for Putrefactions and Calcinations. So let's get those out of the way. Let's also keep the Whist as a precaution. We can use the health in this case. I've already mastered this, but I could reread it and perhaps recall a memory. And then, for the same reason, we will read one of the Salt texts. I don't even remember which one we did. We'll do Voyages of Furnish and Voriel. Okay, so that would give us 3 of the 6 that we need, but we don't have a lot of winter stuff right now, so let's start focusing on those. Regret will be an example of that, and we definitely have an opportunity to gain that because the regret is... In fact, we need 3. So before I do anything, let's get Bittersweet Certainty. So now we just need 2 more. And I think that one's pretty simple. A hindsight and a hindsight and a regret will do the trick. So let's do... I probably should have done the Iron Book now that I think of it, but we'll do Barachild's Elegies here. What S is this? Ambrose's Desk, so we'll use a metal in that case. And then the last one should be Shapt. And we'll go to the hindsight pile, which is here. Which of these do I want? I would have done In Memory of Gods, except it's also a Fusine text. Yeah, let's try a second glory again. Oh, nope. What am I doing? I'll do this Carbonex Schism again. Okay. I guess the last thing that I can focus on is that Transformations and Liberations is also on the list. Now that's a little more difficult to handle because I'm going to need the moth, which is going to be used for other things, but I know that I'll at least tuck away the existing forge. So that's the pattern and the foresight. So those should be the last two candidates that I work with. So with that, let's read. Can I do Road to Janus? There we go. And of course, we may get the foresight from Mr. Kill, but I don't want to put the progress on hold just to satisfy the possibility that he might come up with something useful. So for that, we will read. Let's try the history of the noble endeavor. Oh, actually, that's going to cause angst in my shelving. Well, I'm committed now. Okay, that was a little more work than I had intended, but I think we've got a reasonable plan for the next couple of rounds. Of course I did. Of course I got the foresight. Dead men don't tell no bloody tales. Well, who'd listen? It doesn't really matter because we were going to use that one anyway, but still, it's just kind of funny whenever I anticipate a particular item coming up. All right. So we're on a little bit of a tight timeline. I want to be careful about some of this, but Serena Blackwood herself forged this key. I'm tired of losing it, she said. So we'll put the sound down here. Now we've got our name day riddle. Is this the way to the wood? But perhaps the wood is not a suitable place for the librarian. Or a librarian. Okay, so we did say that we were going to be leveling up door and wall, so the time's come for that one. At last, I approach mastery. And then in 30 seconds, the books will finish, so then we can see where we're at. Again, given the way I've been handling the books, I don't expect the visitor or the assistant to help as much as they sometimes do. But in this case, given the timings and some of the other priorities that I have, I would prefer not to leave some of my upgrades to chance. The Sheretic Book of Suns, a radically different text from any of the other versions of the Book of Suns, attributed to Hagar, Queen of Shur, Mother of Wolves. Set down with reverence before the intercalate by one who understood what would come to pass. Apocryphal chapters foretell the means by which the Sun and Splendor and the Forge might circumvent the impossibility of their joining, through proxies that are in some sense themselves. The Great Counterfeit. The Sun and Splendor and the Forge of Days could not be joined, but Sunset Celia and the Swan King could. This secret is the trick of it. Any librarian can use this to establish a history and complete the game, but the Twiceborn can win a particular victory. So this one will be helpful for our use in putrefactions and calcinations. On Matthias and Amethyst Imago, Lost, an account of an occult romance. A certain Para, son of Aaron, claims to have written this in a single night as part of his initiation into the Damascene branch of the House of Leith, that order of immortals who rejected their past and future. So again, this is potentially of interest. The laws of the house forbade Matthias to love. The customs of the wood forbade the Imago to remain. So he conjured her a final time, when she had uncovered the shears of Alcapura, and she suffered him to cut the wings from her back so that she might remain, and he suffered her to cut the parts which hold man's seed, to keep them from the detestable act. This was love in all its blood and joy. We have cast out Matthias from the house. In the Cradle of the Roots, Matthias and the Imago left their names, and though their names were lost, they found their name-day riddles. This we recall in Solution and Separation, so that in the presence of the moth, our memories may become our futures. Do this wisely, in memory of the name and the long who gave up their past, that they might be together forgotten. The Voyages of Furnish and of Auriel. The impossible travels of a sea captain of the late Phoenician era, suppressed throughout recorded history. Those who read it were said to disappear. Furnishan clearly visited the Mansus, sailing the length of the Painted River. He also claims to have traversed a sea of finest sand, to have dared the blazing waves of the sun's surface, and to have descended to an underworld ocean lit by lamps of black nephrite. Furnishan's final voyage is to retirement on a peaceful island across an evening sea, where he identifies a spring whose waters will keep him safe. I'll be forgotten, he declares, and this work my only trace. Zarog, good to see you. This, by the way, is one thing, I don't know if this is intentional. This can be read in a couple of different ways. But I'll give you an example here. So, the game is pretty transparent in terms of its text. So much so, actually, that there is a README in the game's folder, which sort of says, hey, it's up to you if you want to read this, but I really recommend that you don't, because, the fun is discovering this stuff. So I think the primary driver of this stuff is to give people some nice mysteries to uncover. And if you don't spell something out, but rather you make a conceptual link, this this can sort of tickle people's brains in a nice way. So, he identifies a spring whose waters will keep him safe. We've heard reference to this in The Serenity of the Black Wood. We, also associate this with Noon. It's the reason why I've said that thinking of Noon is connected to the House of Leith. And indeed, I have the Voyages of Furnish and of Auriel. It's in fact the first one that I have under my Noon subset. But the reason why I highlight the accessibility of files is there's also a side of me that wonders, this is a nice technique, I think, as far as writing is concerned, to give the player something to be interested in. It's not a very difficult secret, but it is one that requires you to be paying attention. But this is also the sort of thing where, imagine that I said, okay, you know what? I've got a stream to get on with, and maybe I want to play Rogue Trader or Hellblade or all of these things that I want to get on with. So you know what? Let's just let's cheat a little bit. Let's just go Control F or however you want to do it, and just search for Noon, search for Ys, and read all of the files that come back, and then then we're done. We've got the knowledge that we need. You can do that. There's nothing in this game that stops you from doing that. But you will have an incomplete search, because of course any search that you do is going to it's going to reflect the terms that you're using. And I think very few people, when searching for Noon, are going to search for spring whose waters will keep him safe. You might say spring that causes people to forget, but obviously this is a conceptual step. This is the sort of thing that you really can't search for unless you know what to look for. And of course, if you know what to look for, well, congratulations. You don't need to search for the book. You've got what you need. So there's always that side of me that wonders if this is specifically designed to overcome the fact that as a digital product, it is easy to sort of scrape the folders and see what's going on. Although I would imagine probably the primary purpose of this is just, it's a nice way of forcing people to make a connection rather than always having something on the nose. The Bearchild's Elegies. The Bearchild, a Gaulish adept who won a place in the ranks of the Ordo Lamea, enumerates the great shadows laid to rest in tombs of power and discusses their various conditions. The Bearchild identifies numerous modes that are neither true death nor true life: the vitrification of the heart, the corrupt light of the wood, core stasis, the wandering of the fat. The Bearchild warns particularly of the avidity of tryst, where a remnant shadow's longing for change survives its sense of self and even devours its wist. That longing may draw the curious into the tomb where the remnant shadow changes so that it cannot be distinguished from its visitor, or that the reverse becomes true, and that it is never again possible to say whether it is the shadow or the visitor that exits the tomb. The Carbonek Schism. The Order of Obliviates, on the brink of schism, assembles in a bones house identified only as Carbonek, after the Fisher King's castle of legend. There, the No and the Long of the Order debate their long policy of non-involvement in matters of feather and scale. One of their number, the one recording their debates, describes how, in desperation, he has found some kind of solution in a volume of transcendent heresy, but dares not pursue it alone. He convinces a handful of other Obliviates to depart Carbonek with him, while the others cross the sea to Port Noon. In the last few pages, the author reveals himself as the No adept Ambrose Westcott, writing in an uncharacteristically serious mode. He informs any who should find this work that he has returned the book he spoke of to Abbot Geoffrey's secret, where it can be retrieved with certain invocations of the Sacra Lamea. He hopes that one who has read this far will and understood this much will find a history to determine. So I'm going to have another sip of coffee. I'm enjoying it while it's warm. Glimmerings, an anonymous prison diary written by a dreamer convicted of oniric irresponsibility and confined to the Kukurbet. The prisoner is plainly terrified and bewildered by their situation and has been unable to wrangle a coherent explanation out of anyone, but the dreams keep coming and they keep writing them down. Snow, broken mirrors, half-heard sky music, flowers of white, red, and black, a blood-streaked winter dawn, the most notorious signifiers of oniric risk, fantastically vivid and detailed. No wonder they were locked up. Their final recorded dream is of a worm jewel beneath Brandkrug Isle, which they open with a key carved from their finger bone. The Road to Janus. The Limian Burzgash makes a series of prophecies regarding the initiates of the House of Silence, with intricate, if unhelpful, predictions on their passage through the house. The sixth initiate is Priest and Key, Gate and Church. He shall cross the sea and open the tide. He shall not be the 11th, yet there shall be 7 between them. In the first year of his time, the flower door is opened. The 12th initiate is Salvation and Rack, Steed and Rider, who chooseth one blossom of 3, who casteth away the key, and whom the key shall not cast away, who comes after the flame and before the snow. And finally, The High Traditions of the Noble Endeavor, a blandly positive work on the Endeavor Club, published by the Endeavor Club. The club was founded in 1862, but claims to draw from much older traditions. Club members are assigned names out of noble myth: Joffrey, Roland, and unexpectedly Breadbettle. They claim to be heirs to the Leashed Flame, which gave the island of Britain such appalling power in some histories. Their endeavor itself is a purifying fire which makes its fuel something more than human. This transformation, however, is no longer encouraged by the club, and perhaps, the work is coy on this, no longer permitted. Now I thought there was a regret. Oh yeah, here's the regret. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, we got 7 here. And we'll give this a second. All right. The skill is now level 8. Its power aspects have also increased. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right, but we need... Oh, hang on. This was 7 for weaving and not working. I've clearly made a mistake somewhere here. No, I haven't, because I was waiting for the name day riddle. Okay, so let's take putrefactions and calcinations. We'll definitely use the Great Counterfeit because we know we're going to get rid of that in a little bit. Let's shucks. It's probably better for me to get rid of the stuff that Mr. Kill might generate. And then I guess here, Bittersweet Certainty and Contradiction will do. So this we can use the Tryst. When I thought I'd understood, I'd only begun. Improve the skill to level 7. So I am going to need to think a little bit about some next steps here. I'm still going to do the whole Newman thing. So we're now onto the Sun Disfigured, which, if I'm not mistaken, was the one that came out of this altar, the Abbot Jeffrey's secret. The one that the Carbonic Schism is referring to. Okay. So I have 30 seconds before we can level up weaving and not working. Ah, but if that's true... Okay, so weaving and not working. So then what we're going to do now is we're actually going to start working on transformations and liberations. So that one is Forge and Moth. And we have 2 of 7. So we already have the Foresight. We already have the Pattern. So Regret is 1. Impulse is 2. That's 4. And that's it. Okay. So Transformations and Liberations is actually going to require some effort on our part. Let's say then, obviously I have some options here, but let's say it's probably better for me to focus on things that are achievable within the second half of the day. So let's pivot, and instead we'll focus on the 6 that we need for Snow Stories. So that's Moon and Winter again. So here we'll do Gospel of Zacchaeus. I've already mastered this, but I could reread it and perhaps recall a memory. So that's 2 of the 6. We should be a little more cautious with this. Let's do Book of the Extinguished Heart. So that's 3 of 6. I guess now I have to use the winter stuff. Four of 6. Five of 6. And I don't actually think I got a contradiction. Probably should have started that one first. Okay. I've already mastered this, but I could reread it and perhaps recall a memory. I actually think I'm one too many because I've already got the salt here, but that's fine. I know we're probably gonna have a surplus across a couple of dimensions here. Oriflammes thanks you for your custom, sunset passages, a miscellany of the funerary prayers, ceremonies, and hymns of the Church of the Unconquered Sun, which was ascendant in the third and fourth histories. It schismed during the intercalate when the sun was divided and has not survived as a significant force. Okay, the intuition is something we can apply to the leveling as well. An afternoon spent profitably reading newspapers to the curious, writing affectionate letters for the lonely, steering farmers to the requirements of the Ministry of Agriculture. It is winter, and the storms have tightened the seas. I am sitting before the fire in the sweet bones with a beef and potato pasty in one hand and a hot ale posset in the other. So what I might do when we get to... I think we'll have one more round of books. I should actually sit down and write out exactly what my plans are for leveling. Is this a way to the wood? But perhaps the wood is not a suitable place for the librarian. And the skill is now level 7. Its power aspects have also increased. Okay. So here we're going to level up weaving and not working. At last, I approach mastery. Improve the skill to level 8. Yeah, we're going to take stock with the last batch of memories. I don't have a whole lot that I can throw. I mean, I could probably use like the intuition, but I don't have a whole lot that I can throw into another name day riddle. But if it does turn out there's a nice way that I can get the transformations and liberations moved up, I want to take it. Although I guess technically Bells and Braziers should have been the one I moved at. It doesn't matter. We'll work with what we've got. Okay, The Sun Disfigured, a scroll of anthropoderm parchment written in the golden ink called Uzult. The author of the text calls herself the Elegabline. Sometimes she seems to be Sunset Celia, the Watchman's name. Sometimes she seems to be Lady Tryphon, the Grail-Long. It is unclear whether these are separate entities or the same person. It may be unclear even to the writer. The author of the text... I just read that. The flaws in the Sun's plan are elucidated. The Sun's plan itself is never entirely clear, but it is a project of some kind to enter, possess, or surrender to the glory, the pure light above the Mansus. This book suggests ways in which that plan might fail. The Sun's weakness. The Sun's sins and the Sun's scars are our salvation. There are histories where they will trap us, prevent us rising to eternity. So that actually gives us a moth to work with, so I'm going to stick you here. The Gospel of Zacchaeus, an extremely heterodox account of the Nazarene Messiah and his works, describing his ascension to the Mansus through the opening of his body. 7 were the wounds of his body, 7 the doors of the house, 7 the lesser aspects of the hours, and Knock the aspect above all, for the mother of ants is the mother of salvation. The book includes a description of a rite which can be used to raise a corpse to half-life in memory of he who bled for the wood, but the marginalia claim that the Mother of Ants no longer permits use of this rite. The Book of the Extinguished Heart. In the days of the Shadowless Kings, Edis Lazali was executed for prophesying the division of the sun. If any of his captors grew long, they probably feel rather abashed now. Lazali indicates the sun will be divided in the Mallory by the Forge of Days, armed with the love in her heart. Love will not be the cause of the sun's death, but rather envy. Envy will not be the cause of the son's death, but rather thirst. Thirst shall not be the cause of his death, but curiosity. Curiosity shall not be his end, rather it will be love. The White Book of Brittany, a volume of death lore gifted to St. Brendan's by Brian of Brittany, who was made Earl of Cornwall after the Norman conquest. The white flower lies heavy, but the roots of the watchman's tree run deeper than snow. The white flower is described as the death of wisdom, but wisdom can pass into sleep, not death, when the rage of glass is subjected to sufficiently powerful winter aspect while the ragged crossroads arts are invoked. Those indignities perpetrated by the deceitful fraternity of Obliviates. It is not clear whether CROD, who is identified only by his initials, was in fact an initiate of the Obliviate Order of Immortal Adepts. He wrote this in the 16th century, after the order, if he is to be believed, had passed the height of its power. 58. That they did claim inheritance of the traditions of the House of Leith, but that they have disregarded both its most sacred and its most beautiful ceremonies where they are not found convenient. 59. 71. The glassfinger toxin is no mere assassin's convenient for the Oblividiots to confine to the disposal of their enemies. It has higher uses. Certainly it is a great matter of winter, but I've already outlined the technique by which it may be fitted for its ultimate destiny. So in addition to being a really fun read, obviously the references to the house... Remember I was saying connections to the House of Leith. So again, there's the House of Leith, which is the connection to Noon and the spring that makes you forgotten. And in this case, we have got the Fraternity of Obliviates, which descends from the House of Leith. So this, of course, also becomes the challenge for research, right? Because if you pull on that thread long enough, you wind up reading every single book. But these are sometimes like that one probably does more to establish the connection rather than providing any individual insight. But in this case, we're attempting to understand Noon through understanding people associated with Noon. Same could be said for Ys, just we have fewer instances of that. I guess we have the legend, though. The Ivory Book, a manual of the Order Limea, an order of quasi-immortals who maintained a secret enclave at the source of the river Limia in the Roman province of Hispania Gallicaea. This manual was compiled by one Kurenai, who claims to have fled the tyranny of the Chrysanthemum throne to cross the world and join the Ordo. Members of the Ordo took an oath, the Ivory Chain, not to have commerce with the Hours. Followed literally, this would be almost impossible for an adept, so the manual contains numerous clarifications, exceptions, and processes of indulgence. Kurenai describes the Order's burial rites, which include spells to ensure, in theory, that the souls of dead long are not given to the Hours. The Hour called the Ivory Dove, who memorializes and commemorates, is to be invoked, in secret, in these rites, for with that Hour we have made an understanding. So this one, because I know we have a surplus, I'm actually going to put this in the Forge collection. And looks like that's it. Okay, so I severely underestimated my... Or maybe not severely, but I definitely underestimated my Moon and... Wait, no, I didn't. There's this secret history. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right, and the skill is now level 8. Its power aspects have also increased. So none of these seem to me to be relevant to my effort to level up transformations and liberations. So we will take Snow Stories. We'll take the Memories. We will take the Tryst, or Whist, but Tryst is probably the better option here. When I thought I'd understood, I'd only begun. Improve the skill to level 7. So let's do a quick audit, remembering again that for transformations and liberations, we're going to need 7 Forge or Moth memories. So one option I have is Touch. So that's 1. So Solace is heart and sky. Cheerful ditties are heart and sky. Secret thresholds, knock and rose. Stolen secrets, knock and moon. Beguiling melodies, grail and sky. Contradictions, edge and moon. Foresight we already have. Patterns we already have. Fears is scale and edge. Satisfaction is grail and heart. Salt is knock, moon, and winter. Impulses we don't have, so that's 2. Gossip is grail and rose. Confounding parables is sky, rose, and moon. Hindsight, winter, and scale. Bittersweet certainty, winter, and lantern. Earth signs is, well, up here first of all. Actually, Hive's Lament gives us moth. So I could toss that one in, but I think I know how I'm going to solve this. I just want to make sure that I'm thinking about this in a straightforward way. So we've got earth signs, scale, and nectar. Storms, heart, and sky. Savage hymns, scale, and sky. Intuitions, rose and moon. And finally, revelations, lantern. Now I'm going to pause my reading here because I do want the sun's weakness. So the first 2 easy ones for me to do. If we get away with this, we're going to need either a forge or a moth. So let's keep the metal set aside. The rest is fair game. So this one we will apply the super whist. So the first easy one, we'll just see if there's something fun in impulses for us to work with. So let's do... We did Damascene Traditions last time. Let's do the green jasper tablet this time around. You know what? I think I'm just going to chuck the Hive's Lament in there. I don't even really need to make another one, but I can easily make another one just by using Drums and Dances. And I'll wait 30 seconds so then we can read another Pneuma text, and I get... I kind of get to have it both ways. I'm not necessarily looking to come up with the big list of persistent memories like before, because we just don't have the same need for them. But if I do wind up using something, if I wind up using something the way that I am right now as okay, I need to fill in a gap, this is the easiest way to fill in that gap, I kind of like to replace them if I can. But that is far from a hard rule for me. It's just, you know, it's more of a nice to have. Alright, the skill is now level 7. Its power aspects have also increased. So what we're going to do here is we're going to grab a chair. Any old chair will do, but let's find a special one. So we saw that one last time. I think we've already seen the severe chair, but I actually haven't seen the prison stool. I don't know if this one has a special note. A cheerful lavender color, possibly to encourage rehabilitative enthusiasm. So we'll use our Faust to consider it, although perhaps the shaft is more appropriate. So investigate this object. You won't use this up or consume it by doing this. I'm going to wait just a couple seconds, and now we will apply the extra reading. So we're on to A Child's Treasury of Golden Afternoons, which requires Hyksos. I've already mastered this, but I could reread it and perhaps recall a memory. You really, I mean, Mr. Gill's been pretty good at giving me the memories that I need. It's just the ones that I already have. So I'm not going to complain about that. I really feel like I should be giving him the right kind of encouragement, but night has fallen, dawn will come soon. The Green Jasper Tablet, supposedly copied from a tablet of green jasper which serves as the covenant stone of the Monastery of the Fifth Cup, the token which gives that library shelter beneath the Watchman's Tree. Humankind hid itself from the glory's light in the roots of the Watchman's Tree, but for every chink we stuffed with cloth and hair, we opened another, and the light crept in until we looked below into nowhere, and the eye of the mare in the tree winked red. The tablet expounds the dangers of inviting in the nowhere hour called the mare in the tree, and also of forbidding her entry, since she can never entirely be denied. Along the way, it reveals the secret of the sacrament malachite, in which the merry mare merrily spits, brewed with the rites of the roots from the pneuma pear in the presence of sufficient nectar aspect. Okay, there's the last one that I needed. Prison stool, a cheerful lavender color, possibly to encourage rehabilitative enthusiasm. Someone has scratched a series of tally marks down one leg. 77 days. And a touch. Craft is learnt through the tips of the fingers. Okay, 4 transformations and liberations. We will apply pattern, foresight, the sun's weaknesses, regret, the hive's lament, impulse, and touch. Apply metal. To upgrade a skill, at least one of the memories you're using must be a lesson from the skill or from another that shares a power aspect. At last, I approach mastery. And in 28 seconds, we'll have the avenue, we'll have the Hive's Lament back, and then, of course, we'll be able to see what comes out of the Child's Treasury of Golden Afternoons. Dead men don't tell no bloody tales. Well, who'd listen? So I might as well sleep on this. It's a free memory. And tomorrow we are going to read the book that we picked up, The Sunset Passages. An afternoon spent profitably reading newspapers to the curious, writing affectionate letters for the lonely, steering farmers to the requirements of the Ministry of Agriculture. A buzzing in the skull. The Hive's Lament, a song of pragmatic sorrow. And the skill is now level 8. Its power aspects have also increased. Forge and Moth are less different than we think. Every change is in some way a release. A Child's Treasury of Golden Afternoons. Once upon a time, a very bad man encoded very bad secrets into the charming illustrations of a book of charming stories. Wake the pictures and you will see. Lord Jacob Gristwood, surgeon, ethnologist, philanthropist. There is no proof he ever kept children in hutches beneath his bed. There's no proof he vivisected cats at dinner with his penknife. The Suppression Bureau keeps its secrets. Here's your paint, whispered the wolf to the pale girl. Here's your knife for scraping, and here is your face. Merciless alteration, the fundamental flaw, the irresistible shortcut, the hate that heats, the change that mars, the scar that opens. These are the foulest histories. Alright, so we will move on to the Sky in the Scar, but I will read Sunset Passages first. That will give us Sacra Solis Invicti, so I think in this case it's all 7s and 8s for Sky and Lantern now. So I think Bells and or Applebright Euphonies, I guess, is technically the next one. Okay. So from that, it's helpful here just to take a look. I mean, technically the Foresight would be more useful if I did Bells and Braziers, but we're going to go with Applebright Euphonies because I should have moved that one up first before. Seems to me like So we're going to need the 7, Sky, and Grail. Technically, Merciless Alteration helps us here. So let's do a basic run. Let's just see what we can get through a standard collection. I'm going to skip the music first. Okay, so Sky and Grail. So that's 1. Two. Three. Four. Five. All right, let me just double check this. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You know what? 6. 7. I don't really need the Newman. Yeah, I think I'll go without it. All right. So we will move on to, of course I've used the relevant skill. All right, my bad. We'll do the turquoise hand then. I've already mastered this, but I could reread it and perhaps recall a memory. And hail also helps us with our pursuit, so... Oh, what am I doing? What I should have done was also read the Sunset Passages, because I do not actually have the lesson that I'm getting all this stuff for, so that was a particularly clowny little batch there, but I will live with the consequences. I've carried a memory like a flambeau safe through the mazes of night. This will complete once dawn has come. Let's get some mail money. Mr. Nuclear Monster, it's been a while. How are you doing tonight? What were you playing? And welcome everybody from the Atomic stream. I hope you are doing well. Okay, The Red Book of Brittany, a volume of inklore gifted to St. Brendan's by Brian of Brittany, who was made Earl of Cornwall after the Norman conquest. The red flower lies heavy, but the roots of the watchman's tree are constant. The red flower is described as the temptation of suffering, but its suffering can apparently be allayed when the copper fruit is enspelled with nectar aspect alongside herbs and infusions techniques. A variant of the same approach with the inks of power techniques outlined here can gentle Lethe into a great ink. Doing great. Just finished Outer Wilds. Oh, was that your first time playing the Outer Wilds? Or sorry, it's Outer Wilds, and then it's the Outer Worlds. Which, amusingly enough, there was actually a writer who wound up working on both the Outer Worlds and Outer Wilds. On Matthias and the Amethyst Imago, Pursuit, an account of an occult romance. A certain mech claims to have written this in a single night as part of his initiation into the Theban branch of the House of Leith, that order of immortals who use the arts of water to conceal themselves. Matthias defied us to hunt the names of the moth in the wood to populate his pinned collection. The Amethyst Imago had dallied with the witch and sister, but she'd returned to the wood to plead the moth's pardon. The moth, as a whim or a penance, sent her out to lure the Long to a slough of nightmares. Matthias loved the Imago. Did he? Can Long love? Or has that organ of their soul desiccated beyond repair? The Imago loved Perseus. Did she? Or did she only enact a whim? He pursued her through the wood, but at the last she turned aside from the nightmare slough, and they lay together where the bounds grow bright. So they learnt the Grail's pleasures, and this is the lore they won. Second time playing Outer Wilds, but I never had played the DLC, so this time I did that and finished again. Lovely. I've actually not... I had the DLC on a wish list, but I never actually... I never pulled the trigger and bought it. Yeah, I think they made the point on Twitter that they... I don't know if it was intentional or not, but they definitely pointed out the fact that it is very common for people to append the on Outer Wilds because basically because the two games released in such close proximity, I imagine. But yeah, that was definitely a fun little detail to point out. I still get caught by it. You bounced off Outer Worlds pretty hard when I tried it. Yeah, I mean, so I get the feeling that it's a game that a lot of people see as a kind of a spiritual successor in some ways to Fallout New Vegas. And the thing for me is I've never played Fallout New Vegas. Now, that doesn't necessarily be... I can see that being positive and negative. Like, if you really like that sort of thing, it'll probably work very well for you. If you want something new, it will not work for you. But I don't know. The attitude of the trailers sufficiently interested me. But I think the big thing for me is that I've not been huge on Obsidian games. Sorry. Just give me a second here. Oh, wow. Something's really hammering my bitrate here. Sorry, can you just give me a quick second? I want to see what's going on. I'm going to take a very quick break to see if I can figure out what's going on. Okay, thank you everybody for your patience. I wish I could say I knew what went wrong, and I appreciate the update on the bit rate, Mr. Nuclear Monster. What I'm looking at here basically says 45,000 dropped frames, 15.2% of the stream. So at some point, I'm sure I wound up like barfing halfway through the stream and didn't realize it. It looks like it's still looking a little shaky, but the funny thing is when I actually take a look at the bit rate on the Twitch dashboard, it's okay, and I actually don't see any interruptions to that. So perhaps maybe what we'll do moving forward, I'm almost certainly going to get distracted by the jostling, but rather than break this stream up into multiple parts, if you guys can just let me know if there's something getting in the way of the stream being as clear as it can be, I'll see if I can correlate that with something I'm seeing on my side. And if in the end this just winds up being something that, you know, if this is just something that's weird on my, if it's just something that's weird on my side, but it's not actually affecting people's abilities to see the stream, I don't see any point. Yeah, I mean, but the thing is, with all of that, it means I need to shut down the stream, and I don't want to do that, right? You know, if nobody's actually commented on the stream not being watchable. Now, sometimes people just leave, so I don't want to say that nobody commenting is, you know, is a reason to ignore it. But I think the best thing for me to do is just move forward. And if, you know, if people say that something's gone wrong, so for instance, I'm seeing the drop frames climb right now. You know, if it's only on my side, if it's just me getting weirded out by certain numbers, I'm happy enough to move forward. But I mean, like what I'm seeing right now, it would seem to me like people should see a problem. Okay, thank you, Mr. Nuclear Monster. This is not my first stream. I do understand these tools, but I would rather not spend the time. What I'm trying to communicate is I would rather not spend the time debugging the stream unless someone says it's going wrong. Yes, I have used it. Thank you. And thank you, Ellen Ripley, 17 months, asking for a COD stream. Well, when you reach 24, I'm going to do COD, and and you're going to feel really sorry about that. Thank you very much for resubscribing, and I'm sorry you are arriving in the middle of a clowny moment. We're going to just move forward, and I'm not going to debug on stream. The origins of Hours. The sage and ecstatic Soham, a frequent visitor to the Mansis, claimed to have discoursed with the beach crow in person. Soham later insisted on a sky burial. Soham's writings veer from poetry to confession. He identifies from flesh those who were mortal, from blood those who arose from sacrifice, from light entry from the glory, and from stone those who arose before his knowledge. He insists that the moth was the first god who was blood, but later contradicts himself and claims it was the Red Grail. The Mansis was different before the first god came from light, but never doubted existed even then. The moth, the grail, the egg unhatching all tell different stories of the world's beginning. One of those stories is the oldest, but it may not be the first. Okay, I'm going to do one thing here which might blow up the stream.